Hello chess friends and welcome to your of Chess channel and welcome back to our Catalan opening studies. So in this studies we'll see this beautiful opening analyzed for both sides. So we'll see really here the most important strategic concepts for white and from black. We'll see the most important middle game ideas for both sides. So in my opinion it will be really one of the most important series here on my YouTube chess channel. So we are continuing now with our Catalan opening studies with a very important concept that's familiar I think for both sides. It will be this very early bishop to b4 check. So black delivers an early bishop to b4 check in order to slow down a little bit the pace, in order to slow down a little bit the progress of white's development. So I think it's a very often and very popular line, and the first game that we'll analyze in this particular line, it will be a beautiful gameplay by Świercz against Hans-Moke Niemann back from the 2022 US Chess Championship. In my opinion, this is a brilliant game, especially by Świercz because he played here an outstanding game without inaccuracies, mistakes or blunders, so you can really use his game as your cornerstone in order to get a better understanding what's going on. And I'm sorry if I will be a little bit in depth here because I think the Catalan has to be explained in a deeper way. So I'll try to explain you every move now that has been played between Świercz and Hans-Moke Niemann. In my opinion, really an incredible game, really beautiful game worth to study. And this game I think shows really the beauty of the Catalan opening. So let's see now what's all about, and let's see now what was this beautiful bishop to b4 method. So here we are playing first the move d4. Black's response is knight to f6 and we are playing c4, f4 e6, g3. The Catalan opening now black plays many times this move bishop to b4 is hoping to slow down your pace here. What are you going to do? In my opinion, the best way for white to meet this move bishop to b4 is to play bishop to d2. We have already explained in our series so far this move knight to d2. This move knight to d2 will probably lead into this lines after something like kingside castling, bishop to g2, d5, and if you play something like knight to f3, you can expect this line d takes c5, d takes c4, and after something like kingside castling, we have explained b5 is here even an opportunity. So in my opinion, white needs to be careful. If white wants to go into this line, it's perfectly fine, but as I said, we have already explained this line from black's perspective, so in my opinion this is something that white should try to avoid. There are, I think, better lines for white. So that's why here after move bishop to b4, here we are playing now the move bishop to d2. And the idea of this move bishop to b4, you see, by black is to slow down your progress, because the basic goal of white is to push the pawn on e4. We're trying to get our e4 goal. We're trying to connect 3 pawns in the center of the board, which would give us really a certain mobility, which would give us really a certain strength in the center of the board. Now black again has several choices and will do really many choices. There is even this idea of c5 that's possible. We'll analyze also this line, but in my opinion the best way for black is to retreat to e7. If black plays now the move bishop to d2, and this move we'll analyze only today, not further, after move bishop to d2, white needs now to recapture the pawn, the bishop with the queen. White should not recapture this bishop with the knight, because black could then build a beautiful sort of King's Indian structure. Of course, not the same, but really in a similar way, because after something like e4 that you probably want to play, now we play knight to d7 from black's perspective, and we will play eventually the move e5. And in my opinion, this is really a solid position for black. Black is here equal chances, has equalized the game in an early stage of the game, which is really incredible. Has, I think, even maybe slightly better chances to win the game, because the light square bishop will be a little bit paralyzed by its own pawn structure. So in my opinion, this is not the way to go. That's all because you didn't take out this bishop with the queen, because you took it with the knight. Now after queen to d2, if your opponent wants to attack your queen, it doesn't matter, we'll play simply queen to c2. If you play something like f5, bishop to g2, and we have always this beautiful attacks. If he plays d5, this could be this unnecessary sort of stonewall structure. This is never good. The engine doesn't like, for instance, this line. We continue with normal development, knight to c3, and in the next move I think we can kick away this knight from the square e4. So this is not really the common Dutch position in which this knight is fixed now in the center of the board. So in my opinion, also not a good continuation here for black. So as I said, after move queen to d2, your opponent could probably try now this idea, d5, because he wants to recapture now, he wants to capture the pawn on c4, and there is no check now with queen to a4 and queen to c4, so this is his idea, to decoy your queen to d2, so you cannot play then, as I said, queen to a4 and pick up the pawn. But now we just play normal development with bishop to g2. It doesn't matter, because if your opponent wants to play now d takes c4, we play knight to f3, and after kingside casting, knight to a3, and there's no good way for opponent to protect anymore the pawn on c4, and this is the position I think that the Catalan player wants to get. Catalan players love to get this kind of a position, because first of all, we will recapture our pawn on c4, we will not lose some extra time because we take it, and also when we take it, the knight is on a beautiful square on the square c4, and I think we have this dominant central control. Both of these pawns are still on the board, so we have the powerful e pawn and also the powerful d pawn, so that's, I think, the goal. We want to recapture our pawn, we want to have this pawn central control, and we want to have this beautiful bishop's activity of the bishop on g2. So mission accomplished. This is the position. This is already a +1 evaluation position for white. So that's why, as I said, after move bishop to d2 that white is playing, black should not take out the bishop on d2. He did something already. The bishop slowed down the pace of white development. Now we play bishop to e7 here from black's perspective, and still you see no e4 move is coming because the knight is controlling e4. So now white continues with bishop to g2. We play now from black's perspective now to move d5, and you see now there's no way I think that white is ever going to take out the pawn on d5, because after e takes d5, the black's light square bishop is coming into the game, and that's something that I think white wants to try to avoid. White wants to keep the light square bishop locked, because so far, if you don't touch anything, the light square bishop is paralyzed by its own pawn structure. So far it's not playing in a good way, so that's why c takes d5, I'm sure, it's not going to happen very often in Catalan openings. You can do it, but I would not recommend you here from white perspective to take out the pawn. So this is not also in the spirit of the Catalan. In the Catalan, you're waiting your opponent to play d takes c4 just in order to liberate the long diagonal for the light square bishop, and then hope maybe to, as I said, recapture the pawn somehow on c4 and then to push the pawn on e4. This will be, of course, the optimal position for white in the Catalan opening. So now white continues with knight to f3. We have now kingside castling, and now also kingside castling by white. Now black plays knight to d7. We have now queen to c2. The problem is now many of us don't like to play this kind of stuff, this sort of semi-Slav structure. But if you avoid it, if you delay the semi-Slav structure, if you play too early b6, then I think you could get punished with this kind of an idea. Knight to e5 is very dangerous to handle. Also c takes d5 is unpleasant. Knight to d5, then we can play e4. The knight will be kicked away all over the board. So you have to be careful. First, I think that's why after queen to c2, first playing on the solid structure. Now rook to d1 for instance is going to happen, and now we can play, of course, the move b6 and try to develop our light square bishop here, maybe to a6 or to b7. So this is now also the common setup of blacks. But let's go back. After move c6, as I said, we'll do this a little bit in depth here. I'm sorry if I'm bothering you with maybe some ideas that you already know, but this is very important because so many things can go wrong in the Catalan in an early stage of the game if you don't react correctly. So that's why every move has its own value. So here already, in my opinion, a very important moment, so that's why I highlighted it here, is the move rook to d1. With this move, your opponent is already announcing a different story. Many times your opponent could also try rook to c1, and it's a whole different game now, because if your opponent plays now the move rook to c1, he will probably try to play c takes d5 and launch a c-file attack. So this is his goal. He's trying also maybe c takes d5, knight to c3, e4. So this will be also his idea. But I think his c-file attack is something that bothers you over and over again. So the c7, look at it. For instance, you play something like b6. Now we play c takes d5, c takes d5, and okay, still this is playable for black. I'm not saying black is not going to lose the game because you allowed this one, but it's sometimes a little bit unpleasant to handle this kind of a c-file attack. So this c-file attack will do also in a special video. So now let's stick to this plan, because here, as I said, after move rook to d1, it's a very important moment already in which white is saying to you, if you're playing now the game from black's perspective, that he is not going to probably launch this c file attack. So it's a very, very important moment now. So now it's a different story. New strategies are applied, new ideas are applied, new middle game plans we have now in the continuation of the game. So now black continues now with the move b6, and in my opinion, this is the way to go. This is a solid position. Although it seems weird, you're playing b6, c6, d5, e6. It seems like a cramped really position of pawns, but actually it's a good method because your bishop, as we said in the beginning, it didn't have great activities on this diagonal, but it will come into the game through the square a6, where it's attacking the pawn on c4. So now white continues by fixing the structure with the move b3, and is hoping now to play the move knight to c3 and e4. That was our goal in the first place, if you remember. So in the beginning, we wanted to play the move e4. Black defended the position in a good way, but still our knight to c3 and e4 method is now our main plan. And now, as we said, like in this move, when white played the move rook to d1. So as I said, let's go back. When white played the move rook to d1, basically white showed his cards. But now after move b3, now black is showing his cards. Now white needs to be, I think, careful. White waits the next move by black, because black can play on this plan with bishop to a6. This is the way to go. It's perfectly fine. It's attacking the pawn on c4, and it prevents in some lines the move knight to c3. But probably if you meet a sharp, really a great tactician in the Catalan opening that wants to simply play an unbalanced game, you can really expect the move knight to c3 with the preparation to play the move e4. Don't get surprised by it. Your opponent will probably sacrifice even the pawn on c4, d takes c4, and liberate, in the spirit, of course, of the Catalan, will probably sacrifice the pawn on c4 just in order to let the position explode. So don't get surprised by it. So that's why you see, if you play bishop to a6, your opponent doesn't have to play it. Your opponent can play solid lines with bishop to f4, knight to d to e4. So he can play this kind of stuff. It's also a nice preparation, but it's a little bit slower. A great aggressive Catalan player will probably play the move knight to c3. So we'll probably also meet this idea. So there are great games in the database that I see: Rajabov, Grishchuk, Marcus Reger against Ryzantsev. So great games have been played also in this line knight to c3. Although the engine likes now also black's position, because black can of course capture the pawn on c4, but it's really a brutal game. You have to be really a tactical monster in this line. So let's go back. So after move b3 and bishop to a6, we know the grip, probably bishop to f4, knight to c2, or knight to d to e4. But your opponent, if you're playing of course now the game from white's perspective, could play now the move a5, because a5 is the so-called Sokolsky idea of the Catalan opening. The Sokolsky idea is to hide with our bishop to a6. We want to still play a6, but at least our bishop is connected to our rook. If you play here, like in the previous line, if you play bishop to a6 immediately, notice that the rook is not connected to the bishop. And now here white could try this kind of idea. This is now the so-called Zagoryansky idea with the move a4. We are trying to play a5 and maybe hope to somehow even attack the bishop, because the bishop is a little bit loose on the board, and usually black wants to play something like rook to c8. But look at this, with a5, b takes a5, or if you pick up, of course, if you pass through somehow, there is this loose bishop on a6, so it could be a tactical problem afterwards. So as I said, this is also an interesting line. So as I said, after bishop to a6, you can also expect this line a4. But now here in the game that we're following, it's the game, as I said, Darius Świercz versus Hans-Moke Niemann. Hans-Moke Niemann played the move a5. He's trying to get his rook still connected to the bishop on a6. And now here Darius Świercz continued with bishop to c3. You see the move a5 caused you a very important tempo. Look at this, because you played a5. If you play bishop to a6, then of course bishop to c3 leads into these tactical problems around the square c4. But now after move a5, bishop to c3, if you play now bishop to a6, then white still can continue with knight to d2, connects still the knight to the square c4, and it's a different story. Now we have our plan. The e4 pawn move is coming. As I said, still, I'm not saying this is a winning for white. This is not something that should bother black. Black still, I think, has also chances. The engine, for instance, gives here equal chances for both sides. But in my opinion, this could be a solid game for white. White has his goal. He managed to remove his pieces on good squares, and now his e4 goal is coming. He will maybe be challenged with the move b5, but still e4 is working. Here's something like b takes e4, b takes e4, knight to e4, knight to e4, d takes e4, and knight to e5 leads now into a simplified line for both sides. So in my opinion, as I said, nothing spectacular. Knight to e5, d takes e5, the queen steps back, and now queen to e4, bishop to e4. Again, I think solid game for both sides. You see, the bishop is also attacking this one. Maybe we have some problems around the square h7, but nothing spectacular with g6. This can be defended. So, as I said, you can be the judge of this position. After bishop to c3, you can of course play bishop to a6, but in my opinion, this bishop to a6 is not controlling the e4 square, and that's now the move that white is preparing. So that's why here also in the game that we're following, Hans Moke Niemann is playing now the move bishop to b7. He's having a further control of the e4 square. Of course, Dariusz Świercz continued with his plan. He still wants to launch the e4 attack, but it's a little bit different now. Now the bishop is targeting also the e4 square, so now there are several tactical threats also here. So it's now a little bit double-edged. So now comes also what's a common move for black, queen to c7, and you see in many positions, maybe not the same, but the beauty about the Catalan is that when you get a grip of the Catalan, I think you get many times the same positions, many times the same ideas, many times the same plans. Many times you get maybe even the same positions with a different move order. So now queen to c7, this move has been played many times in chess history. I see really here many games in the database. Queen to c7 is now a certain threat. If something gets cleared on the c file, both queens could be endangered. So now there is this little bit tension here on the c file, so you have to be careful how you're going to push the pawns now in the center of the board. This is now a critical moment of the game, and I've discussed already the problems of the c file or in our Catalan opening study, so you can also check out the video. It's our second video of the series where I've discussed about the 10 common mistakes that can happen to you in the Catalan opening. So now the c file problems are obvious here, I think, in the position. So here rook from a to c1 was played by Dariusz Świercz. So he played, of course, on the problems on the c file. He's saying, I'll get my queen out of the c file, and now you see Hans Moke Niemann is doing the same. He gets also out of the attack. He wants to just get the queen to the b file. So here queen to b1 was played, and now Hans played the beautiful move c5, which is actually a good choice. This is the way to go. Whatever you have to consider when you play pawn moves like this, do I have to recapture with the pawn, or could I recapture with my piece, or am I going to be left with an isolated pawn? Here after move c5, you see c takes d5. Now Hans doesn't want to take out here with the pawn, because if he takes with the pawn, then maybe he is blocking out his light square bishop. He has also maybe some weakness, because if we play something like this, d takes c5, knight to c5 leaves you now with an isolated pawn, which is of course maybe a structural weakness. If you pick up now with the pawn, still this pawn is then weak. So in my opinion, also not something that you want to play. So as I said, many opportunities are here. I think when you're playing a dynamic game like this, this is now the moment in which you should spend most of your time calculating, because it's a dynamic position. We have this pawn collision in the center of the board, so it's now simply time to calculate. We cannot really cover every potential line now in any of our videos. So now after move c takes d5, Hans Moke Niemann recaptured with the pawn, with the bishop, pardon me. We have now the move e4, kick away the bishop, bishop to b7. Nothing wrong also here in black's position. This is not a problem so far. And now after move bishop to b2, we have now queen to b8. So you see, Hans is also getting out of the c file attack. Both players cleared the queens out of the mess. And now after move e5 that Dariusz Świercz played, of course, we have now the move knight to d5. And there is a beautiful game also in the database in which black also, for instance, won the game. But now comes the critical moment of this position. And I think this is a solid position also for black. This is also a solid position for white. Many opportunities are here. White has maybe this backward pawn as a weakness. has of course the strength of the space advantage on the 5th rank. So this is a double-edged position, still with many pieces on the board, so many opportunities for both sides. So in my opinion, we will stop now. This will be sort of a cornerstone position that you probably face many times. But let's now follow the game, because now really wild things happened, because Darius Świercz played the move knight to c4. And this move is a preparation to play the move knight to d6. Knight to d6 is the weak square in the position, and here Hans Niemann plays the crucial mistake of the game. He played queen to a8. He allowed this hop on the knight on d6. When the queen was on b8, the queen controlled the square d6. For instance, in the game that I found also in the database, in one game here, for instance, after move knight to c4, h6 was played, and now nothing spectacular. D takes c5, bishop to c5, a4 and similar stuff, and bishop to a8. So you see, nothing spectacular. Still white has of course a space advantage, but has also a little bit this weak pawn on e5. So this e5 is now, I think, the main battle now. But after move knight to c4, Hans Niemann played a huge mistake. Queen to a8 allowed now Darius Świercz, after d takes c5, knight to c5, knight to d6 the hop. After bishop to d6, we don't want to take out the bishop immediately. Now the bishop is deflected from the square g5, and now there is a checkmate threat on h7, which cannot be basically prevented in a different way. You have to play now the move g6, and this is the problem. Look at this, how Darius Świercz is now exploiting the dark square weaknesses in the position. So all of this was possible just because of this mistake by Hans Niemann, that he did not control the d6 square. So as I said, after move knight to d6, bishop to d6, knight to g5, you have to play g6, and now we take out here the bishop on d6. Okay, and this pawn on d6 is weak. This pawn on d6 will be taken probably after a couple more moves, but here it's obvious the dark square weaknesses. Now we want to maybe sneak in with the queen somehow, maybe build sort of a battery and even deliver checkmate. So here queen to b8 was played by Hans Niemann. He's trying somehow to get the queen into the game, but now look at this, rook to c4 or rook to h4 is the preparation, h6, and now a brilliant move here by Darius Świercz, knight to e6. The problem is, of course, you cannot play f takes e6. That's the issue, because queen to g6 leads into checkmate in 1, which is very stunning. After move knight to e6, knight to e6 had to be played, but look at this now. This bishop gets liberated. Now we can pick up here also the loose knight on d5, and this is now a better continuation, of course, for white, especially because of the extra pawn, but also because of this weaknesses on dark square. So still, you didn't solve every problem here. So the supported pass pawn is of course something that bothers now also black in the continuation of the game. Queen to b7 was played by Hans, d7, rook to d8, and after queen to d3. In this position, actually, Hans Niemann resigned. So very wild stuff. Great game, I think, but let's go back a little bit fast now through this opening theory. This is now this Catalan setup. Bishop to d2 should be met with bishop to e7. Don't trade off the bishops. I think black has good chances. Nothing wrong. As I said, you saw why Hans Niemann lost this game, because of one huge blunder in the continuation. Bishop to e7. Now, as I said, after d5, we are playing this semi-style structure with c6, d5, e6. Now b6, hoping to get the bishop into the game. As I said, if you after b3, if you play this early bishop to a6, it will be probably met with bishop to f4 or a4, which is also a solid line, or with this most aggressive line, which we'll analyze with the move knight to c3. So as I said, this is now the cornerstone position. If a5 you play from black's perspective, then you allow this extra tempo for white to reroute the bishop on c3, and then to play this move knight to d2, which is controlling the square c4 and is a preparation of the pawn breakthrough motif on e4. So I hope that I really didn't complicate too much, but this is a complicated opening. This is a messed up opening. We'll see many opportunities. We'll see even similar lines, but not the same. Like, for instance, in this moment that I've talked about, when we play rook to d1, it's already an announcement that it's a different story. It's not anymore this common c-file attack that we'll also discuss in the continuation of our series. So, as I said, I hope that you enjoyed this video. it's a little bit tough to learn everything about the Catalan, but I'm learning too when I do some studies at home, of course, and I'm sharing it with you. So this is now our fourth video of our Catalan opening studies. Please check out also our videos before, our intro video, our common mistakes video, and also the continuation with move knight to d2. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and what to say, chess is the best, of course.